we're
That's a
back.
good one.
And this week we got three J's.
Yeah. Good, good.
Yeah. And it's going to, we to add even more confusion to it. It's Jason, and Jem.
That's right.
Yeah. So Jason Thompson, this week we welcome back Jason Boal, 33 Sticks Optimization Strategist, to help us continue our theme around getting back to basics. But before we dig into the topic, Jason Boal, how are you? What is going on? So you got a slick new
Uh,
haircut there.
yeah, my middle son, he did the haircut. So he does the lacrosse team for the high school. Even though he's graduated, he's in college, but they're going to bring him back for the cuts this year, even though the coach really doesn't want him to cut everyone's hair because I think he jinxed him one year. But he did a pretty good job. It was getting me a little back to my military basics, military basic training. That's the last time it was this short. Was high school and freshman year in college. So um, yeah,
Dope.
change up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's good. It's good.
looking good.
Yeah.
So
Thank
yeah,
you.
but welcome
Thank you.
back. Glad you could join us to talk about some of the fundamentals when it comes to running an optimization program. So the last few weeks, we've had a series of episodes that all fall under the theme of getting back to basics and simplifying. And furthermore, it's looking at, say, the fundamentals of various things within your analytics and optimization programs that can often get overlooked or forgotten as those programs mature in age. Sometimes even to the fact that like maybe you start to think that like you're so advanced, you don't need to worry about the basics. You don't need to worry about the fundamentals. So we've talked about analytics implementation, we've talked about analysis. So now we want to talk optimization. And I threw out an idea of potentially one of the fundamentals, but there could be others as well. But the idea of maybe like a testing roadmap, something
Mhm.
where as you're building out the program, you're really you put some rigor around a testing roadmap. But like, is that something that can get forgotten as as you advance and there's more advanced features available, or the bells and whistles really start to take over? So yeah, let's start there. Like, as an optimization program matures, in your experience, what are some of those fundamentals that seem to get forgotten or people think they no longer need?
Yeah, I mean, I love the concept of simplicity in general. So this is great. And you know, various clients that we work with optimization wise, obviously they could have a new program, they could have an existing program. Um, but one of the first things I notice when I look at an optimization program or am asked to help guide them in some facet is there a roadmap in place? It tells you a lot about a program just right off the bat. But taking a step back, like what is a roadmap? So we hear optimization roadmap, testing roadmap. It might be called a game plan or a learning agenda. But earlier this morning, I looked up the definition online. So I like to do that just to really understand what it really means. But it was interesting because the definition I got was a detailed plan to guide progress towards a goal. So I think that's really important because as a program gets up and running, sometimes the focus on the goal, on the end state, can be forgotten. We all know how busy we get day to day. We're in reactive mode a lot. So a roadmap in general should help us let us know where we're going and where we are towards that goal. So I just want to kind of throw that out there first, just to kind of level the conversation as far as what does a roadmap mean. Now, specifically around optimization, we really get into which experiment are we launching, what resources do we need to do it, and what's the expected outcome. Those are when we look specifically around an optimization roadmap. But either way, it really is easy you get excited about putting an optimization program in place. One of the first things you hear is we need a roadmap. Let's put a roadmap in place. Awesome. And we'll talk maybe a little bit about what are the inputs to a roadmap in a little bit. But let's get that roadmap in place. Everyone's excited to get it up and running. They launch some tests. You might launch tests for 3, 4, 6 months, and then all of a sudden, maybe 6 months, a year, 2 year, 3 years in the program, the roadmap might still be there, but it may get a little stale. So not only is it critical to have the roadmap in place, but it's also just as you said, Jim, like from a simplicity standpoint, kind of getting back to basics. I think that what's important from optimization program is go back and look at your roadmap if it's in place, dust it off every 6 months. Um, so that's just real high level. Those are my initial thoughts around, why is it important? What is the roadmap and why is it important? Um, so yeah, so love the topic, Jim, for sure.
So you talk about like one of the first things when standing up a program is building out the roadmap. To get right to the point, why is having that critical to the success of the program?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first things it does is it will help instill confidence in the program overall. I think when you're able to go to the advocates that are supporting your optimization program from a financial standpoint, from an advocacy standpoint in your company, to go to that team of senior leaders and say, here is the strategy, here's what we're marching towards. We're marching towards personalization, one-on-one personalization. That's the goal, and this is how we're going to get there, and these are the tests we're going to do. I think the first thing that does is instills a lot of confidence in your program, which is critical because you're going to need that confidence, you're going to need that advocacy to help receive funds, to help drive program ideation, to get the resources you need to help dev tests out. So the first reason it's important is it'll help instill confidence. Um, Another reason it's important is, and I briefly touched upon this, but it gives us waypoints along the way. So it tells us, are we on course or are we off course? And so uh, here's a specific example. Let's say we build out a roadmap and our business objective for the year is, I'm just going to throw out something like increase add to cart, because I know it sounds silly, but so that's our goal. And we build up this roadmap and we're testing. And as you get into these test iterations, it's easy to get lost in the testing process and not take a step back. So you might find in 6 months to a year, all of a sudden we're running all these tests on the homepage now. And we look at our roadmap and we look at our goal, and you're starting to notice, well, we're not, there's not a lot of calls to actions on the homepage. It's not really driving what we want to drive down funnel. So the roadmap will help you also identify, okay, here's where we're actually testing, and is that where we want to test? Is that helping us march towards the goals we originally set out? So that's the second one, is kind of keeping us, and you think of a roadmap like, when I was driving growing up before GPS, I'll date myself a little bit, but we had the maps inside the glove compartment. If I was driving from Philly to up to Maine, I'd pull the map out of the glove compartment, I'd put it down, and there it was, and I'd know when I was off course. It's the same thing with the roadmap here. It's going to tell us, are we off course? The last point would be, and I think it's last but definitely not least. In fact, it's a really important point. Is It's a form of proactive planning, but especially with your business partners. And I'm really thinking around the development side and the IT side. A topic lately has been, how do we get a lot of tests out the door, but with not a lot of IT support, right? I'm not sure that's the right way to look at testing. But with a roadmap, we can say, let's lay out these 10 tests over the next 2 months. Here are the resources we're going to need. We can go to our development team and say, hey, we think we're going to need some help in a couple of weeks with this test, this test. What other releases do you have going on? So it's really a way to identify any potential challenges there in advance, in-house with your team, and just really make sure it's a smooth sail.
So one of the things, so when you're doing analysis, you start out similar with kind of, we keep with this roadmap kind of vision. Like you start out with here's where we're at and here's where we want to end up. We want to understand how our customers are engaging with our checkout flow. However, often every time. The map never goes neatly from A to B. There's always a roadblock or something in the way, and you kind of go off a path of new discovery. Maybe you come back to the original path, maybe not. So can you talk a little bit about how you think about using a roadmap to keep yourself focused on a destination but also maintain the flexibility? Because I'm imagining a lot with optimization that a lot of times when you run tests, you may end up with more questions than you do answers, because it's kind of, you're like, oh, what about this? What about this? Can you talk a little bit how you can use a roadmap to keep you focused on kind of the business goals or what you're trying to achieve, but still have the ability and creativity to kind of veer off course as you either hit obstacles or find new opportunities?
Yeah, I love that point about finding new opportunities and being flexible because you're right. If the program can get in a test and iterate cycle and that flows nicely, you're going to have new ideas coming in, right? Every month, hopefully, maybe even more frequently. So I would say from just getting back to basics, you take that roadmap and you have to have a discussion around it on some sort of consistent basis with your stakeholders. So and in the roadmap, one of the things you can have is a scoring is a real high level scoring model of each test idea. So you sit down with your stakeholders every month. Maybe you have an optimization review, and you say, here are all the test ideas on our roadmap from last month. However, we've got 5 new ideas that came in from either test iterations or someone was doing a deep dive analysis on a test that was running. We can bring those in and we can relook and we can rescore those ideas. As I was mentioned earlier, if you let that roadmap get stale, what you'll notice is, at least my experience has been, is you'll start to see the same 10, 15, 20, 30 ideas sit on the roadmap and not go anywhere. And that tells us that, all right, we need some better ideas here. And so Jason, like to your point, not only does it help us make sure we're marching towards a goal, like how many tests did we run that actually, let's just say, improved revenue or gave us a shot at improving revenue. But can we be flexible enough to say, we just ran a test down in our checkout funnel and learned this. We want to run this test in 2 weeks. How do we fit that into the roadmap? So from back to basics, just from a process standpoint, I think it's really important to have that roadmap reviewed on a regular basis for sure.
So when you think about some of the basics when it comes to building a roadmap, what sorts of things do you think about when you work with a company to build not only the initial roadmap, but kind of the strategy behind how a roadmap is to be used? So, are there certain guardrails? Are there any risks? What kind of things do you do up front to ensure that when you're building a roadmap, not only do you have a meaningful kind of map of tests that are leading you towards a goal, but are there other things that you need to keep in mind in to help ensure that the roadmap is going to get you where you want to go? We
Hmm.
can have a map, but if it's fulfilling, objectives that don't align with what we want, then how good is the map, right? So it's only as good as the map. So how do you think about, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. We're kind of going to this destination, but there are other things. I'm trying to come up with an analogy for like, a road trip, but like, I can have a map, but if I don't have fuel in my car, or I got bought bad tires, then it's gonna. So what kind of things do you think about as you're kind of in that initial stage, kind of from the basics of here's what you need to know about building your roadmap?
Yeah, I was trying to think of an analogy earlier too, and I was going along the sports line just because I coached lacrosse for so many years. Um, I think the one of the most important things is really getting a handle on your business goals and the KPIs. And so like from a coach, like if to liken it to coaching, if I don't know what my goals are for the kids, the boys on my team for the year, whether it's, hey, I want to teach them how to have fun playing lacrosse, how to get some life lessons out of them. I need those goals up front, and I need to know like what I'm gonna be coaching them towards throughout the year. I think it's the same way here. I need to know what my business goals are. I need to know what my primary KPIs are. And sure, they're probably going to change throughout the year. But you might find there's a couple consistent ones that are always up top. So I think one of the most important things is like understanding your company, right? Understanding what is your company trying to do this year? What are the important levers that your team can push, pull, or whatever, or manipulate to help your company achieve those goals. And it doesn't always. We work with a lot of e-commerce, clients. It doesn't always have to be revenue, right? So, a business goal could be, increased engagement on the site through, reading more articles. So, but really just getting an idea of what are those KPIs, what are the goals, and how do we, you know, every roadmap, in my opinion, should have for every test idea, it should be tied to a business goal. And if you can't tie it to a business goal, then it most likely should not be tested because we know we're putting significant resources and time into the development of these tests, the creative resources that go into these tests. You're QAing it. It's an effort. So definitely, tying a business goal to each test idea is paramount.
Okay, I'm gonna have to try to remember my other question because I want to come back to it. So my, if I forget, my other question is around: is there anything too basic to put on your roadmap? But I don't want to ask that yet. I want to talk. Can you give what do you mean by business goals? Can you give examples of what you feel are valid business goals that we can be tested? Is it like a measure of things? Is it conversions or signups or revenue, or can it be more ambiguous than that? Of we have a goal of creating a more enjoyable user experience. We want to, what can you give me like some idea of what you mean around aligning it to a business goal?
Sure. So, and I think it can be both. Um, I know what's helpful to me personally when I sit down and work with a client with their optimization program is when they're able to share their three or four key objectives that they're trying to meet. Let's just say in their personal plan, right, for their work and what they're trying to do, for their team. So, a business goal, it could be, hey, we want to increase revenue by 10%. That could be a business goal, or the goal just could be increase revenue. But we also might want to increase engagement with anonymous visitors. That might be a goal of ours. So we're able to say, we know people come to our site. We can identify people. Maybe we want to identify the anonymous visitors and really get them more engaged in the site, and eventually leading to something down there. So that could be a goal where, it's not necessarily they're already a client, they've already bought something from us, but really understanding what's that population doing, how does that audience behave. So sometimes a goal is penetration into a specific audience or segment. I don't know, does that
Yeah, yeah,
get
yeah,
added a little bit? Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So I'm going to go back to my other question around kind of around this concept of getting the basics right. As you're building out a roadmap and you're thinking about those initial tests that you want to run, is anything too basic to put on your roadmap?
So do you mean, like, is any test idea too basic,
Yeah,
or?
so let's say, again, we're developing our testing roadmap and um, again, let's take the example that this is a company that's just dipping their toes in optimization. I'm assuming, and maybe tell me if I'm wrong, that you wouldn't recommend that the initial stages of a roadmap be these incredibly overly complex tests with, you know, predictive modeling built into it and trying to do all this really complex stuff. I'm assuming you're going to say, hey, we should start with some basic type of tests. So my question is there anything that's too basic to have? Like, what's kind of that bar or starting point from, hey, I'm new to optimization, I want to build a roadmap, we need to start with the basics. What kind of things should I be thinking about testing?
So so the basics. So when I think of basics, a lot of times in the testing industry, you think of, hey, let's do a button color test, right? That's like the kind of the joke. Let's just do a basic button color test. Amazon's doing it, or a button shape test. Um, I don't think there are any ideas that are too basic when you're starting a program. What I would suggest, however, if is to score those ideas anyway. So let's say we have a program that's up and running, they just put a tool into place, and they're just starting out testing. Even if their basic ideas like, oh, we want to change a headline on a homepage, right? I think some of those tests are fine early on, not only to prove out the program and kind of and generate even some more confidence in the program, but as those ideas come in, even though they're basic, I would score those because I think we could even agree that you can have a basic idea down in your checkout flow, and you can have a basic idea on your homepage, and those could potentially have two like incredibly different impacts on your site, even though they're both basic ideas. So I think that's one part of it, and the other is, part of the purpose of the roadmap too is let's make sure we know where we're testing on the site. And that's from like an opportunity sizing standpoint. So we want to test on the site where there's also enough traffic to get us some answers and get us some answers in the time frame we need. So again, let's take those basic ideas and just assess them and prioritize them against each other. But I honestly, Jason, I don't think there's too basic of an idea. I mean, I think what testing programs quickly find out is if their test idea is not impactful enough, and the lift in performance is very small versus their control group, they're going to find that out real quickly because their tests are going to have to run forever and ever, and they're going to be like, why are our tests taking forever to run?
Yeah.
We got so much traffic. Well, it's because maybe your ideas are too basic. But I think you need to go through that learning curve. I think you need to go through some of those tests, just to get up and running, quite frankly.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Sorry, I'm distracted because I'm trying to find this image to send to Jim. I don't know if it's other sports, but in cricket, have you guys ever watched a cricket match?
Part of one, yeah.
No, I can't say.
The commentators like hold the microphone, and then it's got like this thing that comes out, and they hold it like this right up to their face. And ever since
I've seen it.
Have you seen it?
Some soccer matches.
Yeah,
I know which microphone.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I can't get that out of my head when you were, because before we started recording, Jim was giving me some feedback on my levels on my mic not being great. So I'm like now overly conscious of being right up in the mic. Let's talk about this like testing in the beginning, because you bring up an interesting point and something that I've seen with companies, especially around sizing of tests, is that they'll say things like, hey, we want to get started, we want to get our feet wet, figure this out. By the way, you're not going to test on anything important. So you can't test the checkout flow, you can't test the product pages, you can't test the home page. So they pick some one-off page that like 3 people a year go to, and then they're frustrated that they're not getting any results and they can't understand the value of it. So how do you kind of strike a happy medium between addressing their concerns of doing this new thing on really high-profile pages and testing on really high profile pages, so you have an opportunity to really highlight and showcase the impact of what an optimization program can do?
Yeah, that does happen a lot, and I think testing the simple ideas up front, instilling confidence in the program will hopefully lead the group of seniors to be like, okay, I'm comfortable testing on these higher profile pages. When they get to that point, there are some risk mitigation strategies you can put in place. So, for example, I know, when I led a program at a pretty big e-commerce retailer a bunch of years ago, we would test during peak holiday hours, and tons of traffic, really high visibility, both in the pages, but just from the standpoint of just the holiday. But let's test only using 10% of the traffic on the page, right? So maybe the senior leadership is not as comfortable with the tool yet. We've had the tool 6 months. We just started testing. We're not really ready to test in the checkout flow. You don't have to test the whole checkout flow. We could say, hey, let's just take 10% of our visitors to the checkout flow and test there. But just having that discussion, I think, with the leadership group and letting them know, like, there are ways to mitigate risk. And this is just above and beyond the QA process, and letting them know, hey, we're not going to put something out there that's going to break the site, even though that does happen. But the goal is to QA everything properly. But we can take some baby steps down the funnel on those high risk pages.
That's good. So I think we kind of skipped over, speaking of starting with the basics, I think we skipped over some critical basic steps. I mean, we talked about aligning with business goals and things like that, but how do you think of developing an initial testing roadmap? Is it, if I'm the optimization strategist, do I just set that roadmap and it's in my head? Do I use data to inform that roadmap? Do I go back to the business and say, hey, what have you guys been fighting about the past 3 years? We can test those things now. Do we open it up to the wider audience, say, hey, do you guys have still, like, what are the basics for how that, at least that initial roadmap, is developed?
I'm going to say all the above. Those are great ideas. Those are all, and I would even add one: competitive analysis. Get on other people's sites. Other, it doesn't have to be in the same industry, but there really are tons of amazing ideas out there. That you may not think may work in your site, but you bring an idea over and you can have a discussion around it, and then that discussion could morph into a test idea that you never even thought of, really. um, but ideation's huge for the program. You need to get those test ideas flowing. If I was to sit down and Jim usually put me on the spot at the end of these calls, but I'll just put myself on the spot now. You're my vice president. You come to me, hey, we need this roadmap built out. What am I going to do? I mean, me personally, I'm going to get on the site. I'm going to go through all the major site sections. I'm going to look for some low hanging fruit that just from a visual standpoint, from a functionality standpoint, I love the pain points from user feedback. Could be usability studies, could be survey assessments. I think gathering that's huge. I think the data needs to be looked at. I think, getting someone into the data to say, okay, where are opportunities? Where are these? You could even do the quadrant approach, right? Where are high volume pages and our low converters, or our high volume page and our high converters with high bounce rates or something like that. So you can really get in the data to look to identify the areas on the site that need some help. And open it up. If you can find a couple advocates, usually there's a few people in the organization that just they love testing. And they're not on the testing team. They may be in product merchandise. They may be over on your search team, but there are people out there that just love the idea of optimization and testing. And when they hit a site, they come up with ideas. So find an advocate or two, reach out and let those people help you build that roadmap, because you definitely can't do it yourself. That would not be
Yeah.
good.
No, I think that's great advice. And speaking of, developing advocates and finding people that will help support your program, what do you do? I mean, so as an optimization strategist, I can do all those things. I can create and set my roadmap, but oftentimes I may not have the direct authority or autonomy just to run that roadmap. And we've seen this in lots of different organizations where we get buy-in, we've got the roadmap, and then someone will throw up some barriers. It's UX or it's product, or someone's going to say, wait a minute, that I own this. You don't, you're not going to be able to come in and do this. So how, do do you address that before? Do you address that when it comes up? Like, are there ways to minimize that as you're building out and developing your roadmap to know, like, hey, we may have some barriers, when do we address that and how do we minimize that risk?
Yeah, I think the earlier the better, and I love the partnership approach. I think Hila on our side, does a really good job of working with clients and understanding that partnering with IT is super important. I'm just using IT as an example because they are very important for a testing program. But I think bringing those groups in early on and explaining, like, this is what we're trying to do. This is a testing program. Here are some ideas, and asking for them to participate. So instead of being maybe directive about it and saying, "Oh, here's our roadmap. Over the next 6 months, it's set in stone. It's very rigid, and this is what we're testing." And get on board, right? I think it's really asking for input, saying, "Hey, I'm building out this roadmap. Here are some ideas I'm thinking of. What do you think about that? What are your ideas?" Because obviously they're going to be different than my ideas, but I think getting that partnership, I would definitely say upfront for sure. Um, but that collaboration and just kind of opening the door to a partnership and allowing people to help you build that. I think that's really important to a program. So from a, Jim, from a simplifying standpoint, it's a great thing to do right out of the gate. Right when starting a program is, who are the partners that I really need to collaborate with, that are going to help here. So, and you'll find it could be someone on the design team, it could be someone writing content, it could be a developer, it could be anybody really.
I can keep going on asking questions for hours, but I'm looking at Jim to keep us honest on time.
Yeah, yeah, we're right about at time, so I definitely want to start wrapping us up. But I've got two questions. for you, Jason. And yes, I'm going to put you back in on the spot again.
Hmm.
So these questions kind of focus on like two different perspectives. So the first one is I want you to put yourself in the shoes of someone running an optimization program, and you're getting pressure to move fast. Like, Jason, like I think we talked about, was it last week? Like the move fast and break stuff. If move fast and fail fast and whatnot. You're getting pressure to move fast, which would cause you to neglect the fundamentals, such as this, making sure that you have a well maintained roadmap that is guiding you. How do you manage up to say that this is critical and we don't lose sight of this, because of this desire to want to move fast?
So, so Jim, you're saying so we don't want to let we can't let that trump our process, is what you're saying, right? So, I think the key is you need a process in place. If the process is in place, you can scale up with velocity pretty easily. I think the danger though is putting velocity first always, right? So um, if a program comes to me and says, you got to run the program, but oh, we're not going to let you do test briefs and we're not going to let you QA the test properly, and what they're going to find out pretty quickly that once we launch tests, there's going to be problems. We're going to see problems with the test data. There might be an experience that isn't working. You're just going to start seeing a lot of mistakes. So I think if you can get your senior leadership team to understand, hey, we got this process in place. We can run at a certain velocity. This is what we need to do to scale. And typically, if the process is in place, if you're going to scale, we just need more resources. But we definitely can't move so fast where we're going to start making mistakes on the site and losing revenue. I think that's the real danger of the velocity discussion. And typically, the velocity discussion comes up because the test ideas aren't of high quality, right? So we need to test a million ideas to get that one huge test winner. Probably not the best approach. It's really about quality test ideas. So um, I think, yeah, but the pressure is real, Jim. Like, the pressure of revenue and meeting business goals is real. It comes down on the optimization team. We got to run more tests. But really, I think you need to step back and say, are we running impactful tests? Which goes back to the roadmap. Where on the site are we running these tests? Are they tied to a business goal? So I think there's a balance there for sure, Jim. But definitely, as you said, we get that. We run into this a lot. How do we run more tests, more tests?
Yeah, and I think there's also the pressure to like the keeping up with the Joneses. I know someone who's working over at another retailer, and they're doing all these cool things. I want us to do it as well.
Hmm.
Um, so
I will.
one
I
more.
will say. Sorry. I will.
I
I
get
will
get
say. I worked with a client years ago, and um, I think they had 190 or 200 tests in like the first 6 months. But when I looked at the test list, it's you don't. It's easy to run a lot of tests that don't have a lot of impact. So just I guess I'm reiterating, but just making sure the test ideas are impactful.
Yeah, definitely. So then one more question to wrap us up here. Let's flip it around. You're a director who oversees the team responsible for managing the testing program. How do you keep them focused on the fundamentals so that they don't get distracted by the newest shiny object or the something that is not going to necessarily impact the testing program?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would definitely do is tie in, their performance into the testing program, right? And that's got to be tied into the overall, performance of the organization as a whole. But if I'm running the testing team and I'm the director, I mean, I definitely wouldn't focus on velocity, but I would want to focus on, maybe a good metric could be quality of test ideas. How many quality test ideas have we put out this month? Um, what's our test ideation score? Do we feel good about that? all the key inputs to a good program. Are we generating insights, not just results? Are we generating actual insights? So I would try to find those levers where I can help manage my team and kind of tie their performance to the goals that I know that are going to help make the optimization program impactful. And again, the roadmap comes into play there as well.
Yeah. So I guess actually one more question. Was there anything you were hoping maybe I would ask or bring up that we didn't touch on?
Hmm. I mean, I don't. I guess one thing I would say would be like, what if we didn't have a roadmap? Like, okay, I don't know. Well, someone comes and says, I don't even want a roadmap. Well, like, what would be the danger of not having a roadmap? Um, a lot of wasted resources, a lot of wasted time. Um, Definitely, lower returns on your investment on your testing tool. Not driving. It's going to be sporadic. Your program's going to be sporadic, and it's probably going to fail over time. So I guess the question is like, if any of these key components are ignored, if you don't have a roadmap, your optimization program's most likely going to fail. And at work, at best, it's not going to be that good. You're just not going to be helping the company at all. So that would be the one question I just thought of.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good one. And I didn't even think about that. I was just going with the assumption you created it and then starting to neglect it. So, yeah, like,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you
yeah,
just
that's it.
even forget it right off the bat.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
Or
Well, Jason,
if,
this,
if you're running too fast, you may say, "Hey, I don't need it." Right? Like to Jason's point earlier, like, "Oh
yeah,
no, we got to run, run, run. We don't need it." But you don't want to cut those process steps out. You don't want to do that.
yeah, agreed. And that's been the focus on these last several episodes is those things that are key to running a program that you start to neglect as things advance. But Jason, this has been great having you back with us again. Really appreciate the time. Jason Thompson, is there anything you want to say to send us off?
No. No, I think we covered a ton again. And if I start asking more questions, we're going to be like 30 minutes over our kind of focused new runtime. So I'm going to hold my any questions I have for a future episode.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll wrap up there then.
All right. Well, thanks for
Sounds
having me.
good.
Always good to
Yeah,
be here.
yeah. Appreciate you being here. So, all right, thank you
All
both.
right.
We'll talk
See
to
ya.
everyone later.
See ya.
Bye.
See ya.